Hello，你好，欢迎回来，Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on April 24th, 2024. Um, Today I actually had something else planned, but then I was doing a bit of reading and I came across some of these short legends about a very important place in China called Lintao. And I want to share these with you guys because this is uh, a little bit of a deep dive into Chinese mythology and geography and all that fun stuff. Also, a little bit of story time is always a good change of pace rather than another history lesson or cultural lesson. But in these stories, we can also glimpse some history and cultural elements from them. When I say that Lingtao is an important place in China, uh, it is primarily known to be the origin place of Taoism. Taoism is the original Chinese religion, not Buddhism. Buddhism actually came from India. Taoism originated from China. The founder of Taoism is Lao Tzu. In English, it's often pronounced Lao Zhai or Lao Tzu. In Mandarin, it's always pronounced Lao Tzu. Uh, Lao Tzu basically translates to be the old one, the grandfather, the master. Okay, that's what Lao Tzu. Interesting enough, a lot of time when Chinese men want to put emphasis on themselves, uh, there was called address themselves as Lao Tzu, Lao Tzu. And in this case, Lao Tzu basically means daddy or your father. Uh, and it's kind of a hostile way of delivering something that you're trying to say. Like, for example, you rather say, I want some rice. You can say, 老子 want some rice. 老子要吃饭. 老子要吃饭. I want your daddy wants some rice. So it's a kind of aggressive form of putting yourself in the third person uh, point of view and using that your daddy or 老子 in this case uh, in a derogatory term. There are many interesting speech patterns in Mandarin language where people will use other forms of address for themselves, such as for women, a lot of time, rather than saying, um, I am so pissed off, they'll say, 老娘 you're so pissed off. 老娘 means old lady, and in this case, the intention is say your mom. I'm your mom. Like your mom is so pissed off, and they're actually talking about themselves. So um, you'll hear people using like men will say 老子, women will say 老娘, to address themselves in arguments and when they want to sound badass or aggressive or pissed off in an argument. Anyway, that's sort of digress a little bit from our topic of the day, which is Lintao, China. Where is Lintao? Lintao is western, very far west of China. It's on the borderline somewhere between China and Tibet. Uh, and some of you who know your Chinese food, or even have been lucky enough to try Lanzhou beef noodle or Lanzhou lo mein, uh, Lanzhou, Lanzhou is a very famous place in China that is said to come up with the best beef noodle, best soup noodle, best lo mein in in the entire China. So Lanzhou is just north of Lintao. Is barely 20 miles north of Lintao. Like if you jump in a car and you drive between the two places, it barely take any time. So that sort of gives you guys an idea about where Lintao is if you knew where Lanzhou is in China. If not, just know that it's on the border, right there with uh, both Chinese and Tibetan in equal proportion living in this place. So our first story is linked to why is Lintao considered to be the founding place of Taoism in China. Uh, in Lintao, there's uh, uh, there's a mountain called Yuelu Shan. Yuelu Shan means the road to the moon. Beautiful place, right? Beautiful name. So Yuelu Shan mountain. At the top of Yuelu Shan, there's a cliff called Fei Shen Ya, means the flight cliff. I guess if you jump off the cliff, you get to fly for a little bit. Uh, anyway, this is where um, the founding member of Taoism, Lao Tzu himself, uh, went to become a god. So the legend is that it's about 3,000 years ago. That's during the Shang Dynasty. That's when Lao Tzu was around. uh, Somewhere between the end of the Shan Dynasty and the beginning of the Zhou Dynasty. Um, so about 3,000 years ago. Um, Lao Tzu, after becoming enlightened to the ways of the Taoist, and he wrote the Taoist Bible, he decided to leave behind all his wealth and disciples and influence, and he realized that in life, there's the only important thing in life is happiness and freedom. So he decided to leave everything behind. He jumped on the back of his oxen, and him and his ox uh, uh, traveled west from central China and basically had a nice long field trip and walk everywhere and enjoying the view and visiting people, learning about people's life, passing on the words of Taoism, his new philosophy. Tell people, hey, you guys are focusing on the wrong thing. All these wars and politics and unhappiness. You guys should learn to be healthier and happier. A healthy body, healthy mind, it's a way to godhood and all that stuff. Like, since I was never actually a Taoist, I can't really give you word by word what uh, Lao Tzu's teaching was, but I can give you the gist of it. The Taoist, fundamental Taoist philosophy is the healthy mind, healthy body lead to divinity. Uh, Um, so Lao Tzu spent the next 17 years traveling and going further and further west. He wanted to see how far he could go, how far him and his ox could travel. I don't know how long ox can live, but that seems like an awful long time. Maybe he bought a new one somewhere on the way. Or maybe, like the legend said, Lao Tzu had found ways to make medicines that would make even not only himself, but even his cats and dogs and chicken immortal. So maybe his ox was immortal too. Who knows? So uh, westward he went for 17 years, and finally he came to the Wangyueshan mountain in Lintao. And when he was sitting in the mountain by the cliff's edge of uh, uh, this flying cliff, Fei Shen he suddenly felt divinity come upon him, and he left his clothes and the book he wrote on Taoism upon a rock, and he stepped off the edge of the cliff, and rather than falling to his death, he flew up and became the uh, god of Taoism. Basically, he became like uh, I mean, some people said he was the first Jade Emperor, but uh, that is to be debated. I don't think he actually was. I think uh, uh, he was because the Jade Emperor has always been more political than anything else, and I can't see um, Lao Tzu having left all the politics and wealth behind, would get back into doing that. So I think he's actually one rank higher up than the Jade Emperor. You can say he's like the Pope in Taoism. So since the uh, Wangyueshan mountain and the Feishenya cliff was where Lao Tzu did his I'm becoming a god thing, uh, that place, including the region of Lintao, has always been said to be the beginning of Taoist religion, because that's where Lao Tzu became a god, basically. Um, and this legend sort of take a backseat for 1,500 years. And until the Tang Dynasty, okay, we fast forward 1,500 years to the Tang Dynasty. I don't know if any of you remember this, but I mentioned before when we talk about Tang Taizong and the other emperors of the greatest dynasty in Chinese history, the Tang emperors, even though the dynasty is called Tang Dynasty, Tang wasn't their actual family name. The Tang Dynasty, the emperors were their last name were Li. Uh, so the first Tang emperor, his actual name was Li Yuan. Now, a lot of you who don't know your Taoist religion, you might not know this because Lao Tzu was not Lao Tzu's real name. Like I said, Lao Tzu is more of a fixed uh, affectation that people gave him. It means the great old one, the master. Okay, so Lao Tzu's real name is Li Er. Okay, his last name was Li. So, uh, when Li Yuan took over the entire China and created the Tang Dynasty, many people said that Li Yuan and his family actually came out of the Lintao region. They came out of the Wangyueshan mountain, and they were the direct descendants of Li Er, aka Lao Tzu. So that's how him and his descendants could create the best and strongest dynasty in Chinese history. It's because they had Lao Tzu's uh, biological makeup in every one of them. Next, let's talk about one of the most famous god of Lintao. You see, Lintao is not only the founding origin place of Taoism, it is also a place of multiculturalism. Like I said, in Lintao, there's a lot of Chinese, which means a lot of them would be Buddhist or Taoist. And then there are a lot of Tibetans, and they have their own religion as well. So there's a lot of people always say Lintao has a lot of ghosts and demons and gods, like more than China, more than Tibet, like because it got both. So it's very chaotic. It's a place of religious unrest for thousands of years. So finally, in the uh, Ming Dynasty, the Emperor Zhu, he decided, okay, enough is enough. We are going to uh, standardize these gods and goddesses. So Emperor Zhu went to Lintao and personally christened 8 gods and goddesses, the eight of these immortals, to be the official guardian, the official gods and goddesses of Lintao. And all 8 of them were once real people. They were real people that passed on. And the leading one of them, the leader of these 8 immortals of Lintao, is the dragon god Xie Xu. So, who is this Xie Xu? Ah, now that's an interesting one. Xie Xu was a very patriotic general of the Song Dynasty. So when the Mongols took over China and the Song Dynasty was uh, destroyed, Xie Xu did not want to live without his country. So Xie Xu threw himself into the river and drowned himself. Uh, but his patriotism burned so brightly that even the underworld did not want to take his spirit because he was such a fierce, loyal person to the land that he fought so hard for. So his spirit wandered the land for hundreds of years until the Mongols were finally kicked out of China and the Emperor Zhu created the Ming Dynasty and took China back into the hands of real Chinese. So the story goes that in the beginning, when Emperor Zhu was still trying to put down all the rebellions and all the naysayers, because when the Mongols left, there were a lot of unrest. There were a lot of different clans, different warring factions, and Emperor Zhu was like, fighting pirates in the south and fighting bandits in the north, and always engaged in battles and against other lords and other people who wanted to become emperor. So there was this one fight near the Lintao region where the Emperor Zhu and his forces were getting their butts royally kicked by one of his rivals. His rivals was his rival was a better general, was a better soldier, and had better warriors at his side, and more ships and more horses, more of everything. And Emperor Zhu was seriously losing the battle. And suddenly, out of a clear blue sky, there came a thunderstorm and a thunderstorm came down from above and blocked out the sun, and a dust storm rose out of the ground itself and swallowed up the army of the rival lord. And that's how the Emperor Zhu was able to win that battle. So one day, after he became the emperor and everything was united and peaceful, one day after lunch, Emperor Zhu decided to lay down and have a nap. And when he lay down, he was visited by a warrior in ancient Song Dynasty armor. And the warrior told him, "You are a lousy emperor." And Emperor Zhu said, "How can you say that? I just united the entire China. I just kicked the Mongols out of China. I just took China back into our own hand. How can you say I'm a lousy emperor?" And the ghost said to him, "Do you know who I am?" I was like, "No." "I am Xie Xu from Song Dynasty. I was one of the last patriots, one of the last generals that died with my country. When I saw that you were going to lose that battle and you were going to get killed by the other lord, I used my power to help you out. I called down the thunderstorm. I brought the sandstorm and demolished their forces. Now that you are the emperor, you didn't even do anything to honor me. You are a lousy person, and a lousy person will make a lousy emperor, and saying that the ghost smacked him on the side of his head and disappeared. And Emperor Zhu woke up. At first, he thought that it was just a dream, but when he felt his head, there was a lump on the side of his head, like someone hit him on the head really hard. And that's when he realized that maybe this wasn't just a dream, maybe this was real. So he had his scholars research who is this Xie Xu, and that's when they told him Xie Xu is one of the greatest patriotic generals of the Song Dynasty that fought the Mongols all the way to the bitter end, and he threw himself in the river and drowned in the Lintao region. So that's why Emperor Zhu decided to go to Lintao and christened 8 immortals to rule the region and give them 8 of their official gods. And the head of these gods was Xie Xu, the Dragon King. Um, in China, in on the 5th of May, going by the lunar calendar every year, uh, the 5th of May, as some of you know, is Dragon Boat Day, which has its own legend. People go out into the rivers and oceans and paddle the dragon boat, and they eat rice wrapped uh, and a rice cake and stuff like that. On the same day, in Lintao region, they don't do dragon boat. Instead, in Lintao, they uh, burn incense, they do their prayer, and then they take the statue of Xie Xu, the Dragon King, out of the temple and monasteries. They take these statues of Xie Xu, the Dragon King, to the Taohe River, the Peach River, which is a river that goes right through Lintao, which will be more important in our next story. So they take the statues of Xie Xu, the Dragon King, down to the Peach River and give him a bath. Basically, this is the day when they wash the dragon statue and then bring him back to the temples and then do more prayer. Uh, that is what they need to do to guarantee that the Dragon King Xie Xu and all the gods and goddesses that follow him will continue to bless the people of Lintao year after year after year. Now, if you have ever traveled to Lintao, you will know that Lintao has several unique things about it. One, really good noodles, because like I said, it's just south of Lanzhou, which produce like the best noodle, best soup noodle in China. So Lintao, being so close to Lanzhou, obviously have really good noodle. Um, and it's multiculturalism, and it's a really strong religious overtone. But if you've been there, you would know that probably the one thing that's going to stay in your mind the most, especially if you go in the wintertime, is how bloody cold it is. Like, I'm not even joking. In Lintao, in the wintertime, people like to play this game, and you can even find example of that on YouTube. If you take a glass of water and go out in the yard and you throw that glass of water up in the air, don't throw the glass, just like swing the glass up high to spray that water up into the air. By the time the water come back down, it turned into ice crystals. It turned into pearls of ice. That's how cold that it is in Lintao. Not just Lintao, but a lot of northern, northwestern, northeastern China. It gets crazy, crazy cold. Okay. So in Lintao, there is a river. We already mentioned it, called the Peach River. In Mandarin called Taohe. And every winter, the Peach River become a sensational tourist spot because you can get a very majestic view of the river uh, uh, going down the mountain, the rapids, and most impressive of all is you see pearls of ice of different sizes floating down the river. They're like crystals flowing on the water. Where did this uh, crystals come from? It's when the water uh, come down from the mountain. Whenever the water spray over the edge of chasms and run over boulders, you know how the water have sprays that spray up in the air. Well, remember what I told you about throwing a glass of water up in the air and come down and it's already frozen? So it does that to the water, to the spray created by the rapids and the waterfalls as well. So by the time the water get to the Lintao region to and form the Peach River, because the body of water, especially moving water, is too large to freeze, but it carries all these frozen sprays of water, frozen crystals and pearls of ice, and it's just something to really behold. It like seeing pearls and crystals floating down the stream. There's a small, sad legend on how these ice pearls and crystals come to be. The story goes that long, long time ago in the Lintao region, there was a poor young boy who worked for one of the local uh, landowners as a shepherd. So every day, this poor young boy would take the sheep to go and do their grazing and sing to the sheep and all that stuff and make sure that they got back to the landowner's ranch. This young boy was poor, but he was gorgeous looking, and he had a beautiful singing voice, and he played the most beautiful flute. So, needless to say, gradually, as time went by, the landowner's daughter fell in love with the young shepherd, and the young shepherd fell in love with the landowner's daughter, as most of these stories would go. Well, the landowner heard about this and he uh, did not like the idea of such a poor peasant being engaged with his daughter in any way. So he decided to make it very difficult for this boy. So he went to this boy and he said, I understand that you love my daughter, but you need to know that my daughter is used to a lavish lifestyle because I am rich. I could buy her anything she wanted. So if you want to marry her, I can't have her suffer poverty. So if you can bring me 100 pieces of silver for a dowry, for a proposal, uh, then I will agree for her to marry you. Otherwise, you should just forget about it. Well, this young shepherd, never mind 100 pieces of silver, he didn't even have half a piece of silver. There's no way he would ever have even one piece of silver. So he spent days and nights crying and trying to figure this out and praying to the gods. And finally, one day, old man an old man who was one of the gods in disguise came to him, and this old man said, "If you follow the Peach River to its originating place, way up into the mountains, there is a forest of crystal and pearl trees. And if you find the forest of crystal and pearl trees, you can just go up one of those trees and grab a handful of pearls and never mind 100 pieces of silver. With that handful full of pearls, you'll be able to buy an entire castle. So the young boy set out on foot to find this pearl and crystal forest. Following the river, he went further and further up north into the mountains, and it was really cold. I already mentioned this place is very cold, and he didn't have a lot of food. There wasn't a lot of animals he could catch because it's really cold, and animals were hiding, hibernating. It was desolation and dead and dying trees everywhere. And he walked for days and days. And just as he was about to die, he finally came upon a forest where the trees were all frozen and they looked like pearls and crystals constructions. The young boy by this time knew that there's no way he was going to be able to make it back alive because he was already exhausted and it took him days and days of walking to get here. It's not like he could just call Uber to take him home. Uh, so he knew he was going to die. He wasn't going to make it back. So in desperation, he decided, well, if I'm going to die here, at least I need to send a message to my beloved so she know that I tried. So he, with his last ounce of energy, he wrapped his arm around one of these uh, crystal and pearl trees and he shook the tree as hard as he could. And when he did that, a whole lot of pearls fell from the treetop into the Peach River, and the Peach River carried the pearls down to the Lintao region. And the boy, using up his last bit of energy to do that, perished. At the downstream of the river, the young lady who was waiting for her shepherd to come home to marry her, uh, she was standing by the river every day waiting for him. And one day she saw a miracle. These pearls and crystals came drifting down on the current of the river. And she knew that her beloved found the forest. And these were the gift that he was supposed to bring back. But where was he? She saw the pearls and the crystal, but her beloved never came back. So for days, every day, she still stood by the river, waiting for him to return. The god the gods finally got uh, touched by her uh, being faithful to her beloved, and they turned her into a large boulder that so she could stand by the riverside eternally, waiting for him to return. That boulder is still there by the Peach River today in Lintao region, and the pearls and crystal still drift on the current every day. On New Year's Eve every year, the people in Lintao region have a special tradition. In the middle of the night, every family have to go down to the riverside with a big bucket. And because it's pitch black and you can't see very well, you just dip your bucket into the water to get a full bucket of river water. And then you take that bucket home and leave it out in the yard and so it won't melt. And the next day, on New Year's Day, you come out in the yard and you count how many ice crystals and pearls you got in your bucket. And depending on the size of them and the number of them, it tells you how well or how poor you'll be doing in the coming year. And then after you count them, you do not throw out these ice and water. You take them inside and warm them up, mix some flours and seasoning in them, and then you use the water and flour and seasoning to make your New Year cake for your family. And eating that is said to bring your family good luck. I hope you guys have enjoyed these little stories about this lesser known region of China, the Lintao region, and its various religious and interesting tale. I'll be back again tomorrow for some Toy Thursday fun. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。